Yeah, mate. We're going to continue throughout the month of January. We're going to be looking through the first letter that the Apostle John writes, John in 1 John. So if you've got a Bible and you want to open up to 1 John chapter 3, that would be great, wherever you are. Just before Christmas, my family and I managed to escape the Melbourne lockdown, and we headed north to New South Wales, to the north coast there for a short break. Our plan was to lie on a beach and let our bodies feel the warmth of the sun and be reinvigorated. But sadly, there was this incredible storm which put paid to that idea. But the first couple of days that we were there, the weather was pretty decent. So on the first evening, I think it actually was, we were walking along the beach. That's my wife and my two daughters, and we decided to do some exploring. And this is something that in particular throughout the life of my two daughters that we've always loved to do. We love to explore beaches, but particularly we love to explore rock pools. Always have, and I trust that we always will. You know, rock pools are wondrous places of discovery. And you lift a rock, what will you find? Search into every nook and cranny. You know what it is? You kind of put your hand under there, break all the rules about things that you shouldn't be touching and stuff like that. Is there a blue ring octopus going to sting you and stuff like that? But we love that. And I love it when we do it, and we hear always, because my kids no longer kind of stay with me, they kind of explore into other areas beyond my capability. They go there and I hear these excited voices and exclamations. And then I'll hear this, come quick, come and help me with this, Dad, look at this. Whenever you hear that, you're always, the expectation is kind of ramped up, hasn't it? There's got to be something wonderful on the end of it, something extraordinary that you're expecting. Usually in a rock pool, it's some sort of a wonder of marine life. It might be an anemone, it might be a shell, a fish, or often the apex for us as a family is we've always loved to find and search for crabs. The larger, the better. The bigger the claw, the more risky, the more challenge, the more excitement. Now let me ask you a little question. What were you last amazed at? What were you last, which caused you almost like to bubble up inside and make some sort of proclamation? Look at this. Come quick. What is it for you? If you're in our house, you might hear something like this. If it's from my wife, it might be, come and look at this beautiful sunset. Or there's a peacock in the front yard. What's it doing there? Maybe some parrots on the back porch or some kookaburras. We have quite a lot of bird life around it. I love these exclamations. What were you last amazed by? What were you last amazed by? You know, today I want you to be reminded of this very simple truth, that you can be amazed by God's love. In 1 John chapter 3, verse 1, it has this very simple little section here. It says, how great is the love the Father has lavished on us. How marvelous, how wondrous. Look at this. And that's the most kind of literal translation of that little passage. See what love the Father has got. See it. Look at it. Let your jaw drop. What kind of love is this? In fact, the little expression there is a little Greek expression that literally means it's from what country is this from? Or if we were putting it in our modern vernacular, this love is out of this world. It's not something that we are familiar with. Look at the sort of love the Father has given us. You know, we're all familiar with love, aren't we? Love is one of the essentials for life. We tend to think that the essentials for life are things like air and water and food and shelter. But I want to say to you that love is even more important, I believe. For while air and water may help you to survive, love is necessary for you to truly live. Because as important as they are, air and food and water, love is the lifeblood of our existence. We love food and music, the sunshine, our football team. But the love we're talking about, of course, is more than this, isn't it? And we love our friends and our family, our children, our boyfriend, our girlfriend, our spouse. Well, John is familiar with all of this type of love, but he still gasps in amazement at the love of God. It's still with enthusiastic and kind of this passionate tone in his voice. He says, come and look at this.
Look at this love. This is the love that God has given us. And it's not like he's just given us a little bit. It says that he's lavished it on us. That's a great description of God's love, isn't it? It's so great, so abundant that God has lavished it on us. I'll bet that over Christmas there's been a lot of lavishing. What happened with you? In my house, it's always Christmas pudding that is lavished. You know the question that gets asked? Lavished. Would you like some cream or custard or ice cream with that? And the answer, of course, is yes. And how much would you like? Well, you know, it's like the cat's got your tongue. You've just forgot. It just keeps pouring over it. In fact, one of the definitions in my mind of lavishing is you should not be able to see the Christmas pudding. It should just be like an amalgam. You know how there's people who like to pretty up everything? And now I went online and I was looking for a true picture of this, and they really, frankly, the pictures that they had online were really, frankly, disappointing. They'd have this beautiful, like Christmas pudding type thing, and then the cream or something or the custard would be almost like artistically swirling over it in just small amounts. And I'm thinking, you've kind of like missed the point. You've skimped on the cream, or you've skimped on the custard. It's meant to be pouring over it. It's meant to be spilling over the sides. You should not be able to take a bite of Christmas pudding with it being dry, should you? It should have heaps over it. When I think about the opposite of how you should skimp on something, I think about Vegemite. You know how you've seen those suckers from overseas? If you're overseas at the moment and you're watching and you've eaten Vegemite, some people, when they do it, they put far too much, frankly, on the toast, don't they? Vegemite, in my mind, should be smeared, a gentle smear, so you can see the toast. Isn't that the way you should do it? Yes. Well, that's the opposite of lavishing. Lavishing is what my children do when occasionally Nutella turns up in the shopping. When the Nutella is there, the toast or the bread, you can't see it because there's thick waves of Nutella. A jar of Vegemite lasts a year. A jar of Nutella lasts maybe 3 days. Isn't that the difference? You see, that's the difference between love that is smeared and love that is lavished. And God lavishes this love on his people. You can't see through it. It's thick. It is deep. That's the type of love that we're talking about here. We're not talking about love that is skimped. Parents love to lavish gifts on children, don't they? Because they're an expression of love. Buy the gifts, but what we'll do is we'll borrow the money from future gifts to get this one. So this is a gift for your birthday, but really it's kind of like birthday and Christmas. You know what I'm talking about? You don't know what I'm talking about, Fran. You need to think about this. I'm taking away for that gift for the future. You need to be nice to my children because they're not due a gift till like 2024 or something like that, But that's the nature of parental love, isn't it? They want to lavish love on children. How great is the love the Father has lavished on us. You think about how you might lavish your love on someone. Sometimes it is through a gift. Sometimes maybe it's through a hug or an expression of affection. Or many of us actually love to serve someone else. We like to make them a beautiful dinner as an expression of love. For some of us, we love to lavish love through praise and encouragement. My wife would tell you that the best gift of love that she can receive is time, because that's most important to her. So why, though, is God's love so distinctive and different? You know, the most significant date on our nation's calendar, and the one that provokes the greatest outpouring of emotion for the person in the street, is Anzac Day. This day, this reminder of young men and women who have sacrificed their lives to serve our nation is ingrained into our minds. Many of us have that image from the movie Gallipoli of young men pouring over the trench to their doom, because to sacrifice is to love. On Anzac Day, you'll often hear John chapter 15, verse 13, also written by the same guy who wrote this letter. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. Well, this is the expression of love from Jesus. 1 John 3:16 says this. This is how we know what love is, that Jesus Christ laid down his life for us. This is the love that we're talking about that is lavished. It is sacrificial love. John writes again, he says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The Father knows me, it says a little bit later on, I know the Father, and I lay my life down for the sheep. This is love that is freely given. It's not taken, but it's offered. And Jesus says later on in that passage, he says, I lay down my life. No one takes it from me. I lay it down of my own accord. It's not love which is forced or coerced. It's love which is freely given, this sacrificial love. This sacrifice is not a futile sacrifice. It's a sacrifice for the most significant of reasons. In verse 5 of this chapter we're looking at, it says this, you know that Jesus came to take away our sin. For that's what his sacrifice of love does. It makes forgiveness freely available to everyone. Doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter how stained your life is. Doesn't matter how much of a disaster it is. How horrific you might feel. That's the nature of God's love. This is a love that's not only sacrificial, it's a love that saves us. This is how God showed his love, he says a little bit later on, among us. He sent his one and only Son, Jesus, into the world that we might live through him. This is love, not that we love God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sin. It is this love that saves us. Not only does it save us from some sort of future destiny or some penalty of sin, it saves us to live now. To your life right now in January 2021. This is the love that allows you to truly live. To live through Jesus in a new way with a new life. And this is what John says. Look at this love. This is not Hallmark greeting card love. This is not love out of some rom-com. This is extraordinary, out of the world love. Look at this love. It's a love that pays a heavy price with no possibility of receiving anything in return. You know, there's some discussion in kind of philosophical circles about whether we can truly live and give and love someone or something with no expectation of receiving anything back. And so the idea is something like this. So some of you know that many of our church community and extended community help to serve homeless people through winter shelter. And so you might think, well, they're going down there to help provide accommodation or to feed, to give an offering of love. They don't actually receive anything back. It's not like they're getting paid for it. But philosophers would argue, well, what they receive back is they receive some sense of satisfaction. They receive some sense of, I've done something good here. So you really can't offer love without getting anything back. But you see, the nature of God is this, is that God is complete and without need. If God is God, that's true. You cannot need something else if you're truly God. So God receives nothing back from his offering of sacrificial love. No, God simply gives because it is nature. It is his nature because God is love. And I want to say to you, look at that love. That's the love that he gives to all of his children. How great is the love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God. And that is what we are. And again, as we read this letter, children pop up. Whether it's John addressing his readers as children or referring to them as children of God. But I got to say, in some ways, it's a strange idea to be called a child of God. It's a strange idea. I mean, I know who my biological parents are, and one of them is not God. In some ways, it feels like a strange idea to be called a child of God. I mean, I can kind of hear you say that in some sort of abstract way, that if you believe in God, well, God could be seen as the creator and therefore the parent of all of creation. Well, that's actually not what it's talking about here. John's talking about people who are children because those who are born into God's family. How are people born into God's family? Not through their parents, not through coming to church or something like that. In John chapter 1, it says this, to all who received him, so all who received Jesus, to the people who believed in his name, he gave them the right to be called children of God. It's talking about this statement that if you can believe in Jesus, you can be called a child of God. To be born into God here means to become a part of a new family. To enjoy this new life. Whereas before you were dead to God, now you are alive to God. Before I was not in his family, but now I am a child of God. And I do this by believing in him. This is the invitation of God for you and me to be his child. This is the invitation of God for you and me to become truly alive. You see, I'm a child of God by choice, not by biology. I truly and freely accept this gift of God's love. Now, you know the expression that you can choose your friends, but you're stuck with your family? Well, here we choose to accept this offer of God's love. Is that you? Do you know what it is to be a child of God? And again, John repeats that. This is what we are, a child of God. And be amazed at that love and that privilege of being a child. Be amazed at it. Can I just let you sit with that for a moment? Maybe for some of us here today, you do know and experience this love. And as you pause and reflect, you're amazed. Maybe for some of us, this love that I speak of is like being in a high school physics class. The teacher is speaking about things that I just can't get a handle on. It kind of must sound good on paper, but I don't really know it. Maybe that's where you are. Or maybe for some, this love that I speak about is a foreign concept. I might as well just be speaking some strange language, and it's not even something that I know or sense. It's just so far gone. Maybe for some of us, the idea of a father lavishing love is an impossible. In fact, it's not even just impossible to get our hands about. It's repulsive. It's something that you've read about in a book or heard in a song, but you don't understand it because you don't have a loving parent. And when I talk about it, it brings up kind of almost like a bile in your mouth. When the Bible calls God a father, it's unhelpful. I feel for you today. I know what it is to walk in your shoes. You will never hear me refer to my father as my dad, because to me the term dad implies relationship and affection, things that I never experienced with my father. So I know what that feels like. And I know that for some of you, when you hear those terms of love, that you feel like you've been burnt in some significant way in the past. And so when you hear those ideas, that metaphor, you kind of push it away. But can I say to you today, look at this love still. This love that God lavishes on his children, because it is different than any other love that you've experienced. You know, the use of father in the text here is just simply a metaphor that we can hopefully use in some positive sense. The truth is that even the best father, and I have to say, I have a stubby holder at home that I received from one of my daughters when she was in primary school. It declares, in fact, that I am the best father. Even the best father is only a pale imitation of the love of God the Father. Because God's love is the highest form of love. I remember having a discussion with one friend of mine, in fact, a person from this church, a friend of mine, about the nature of love and the highest form of love. He argued that the highest form of love was from a dog. He said this, and he explained it this way, and see if you can wrap your head around this. He said, if you have a dog, well, he said, first of all, Andy, think of it this way. He said, if I was to take my wife and lock her in the boot of the car for 24 hours, right? When you open up the boot, she's not going to be very happy. But if I take my dog and I put it in the boot and leave it in there for 24 hours and open up the boot, it's going to jump out and wag its tail and lick me. So dogs, in fact, have the highest form of love that we could express. You need to be praying for that man. You know, I remember when my children were born very clearly. I thought I knew love. And Narelle's the most loving person I know. I love her. But in my children, I experienced love in a new way. And if that's the best simile that we can use to describe God's love, then that's powerful. So look at this love, please. Look at this love that God has lavished on it. Look at this love, even if you have been messed up by life. Whether you carried baggage and hurt, look at this love. Look at this love. This love that allows Jesus to speak to those who executed him and say, Father, forgive them. Look at this love which welcomed the people who were ostracized by the rest of the world. Look at this love which caused him to say to a prostitute who should have been condemned to a death, I don't condemn you. Look to this love that allowed him to touch a leper, which almost had a sense of certain death. Look at this love that God has lavished. Not only lavished, but welcomed to you and invited to you as his child. Because this is love that God lavishes on his children. Let's pray together, shall we? For our God, we almost need to just stop and to take time to let the sense of the depth and the wonder of your love resonate in our souls. And to think about some of the disastrous parts of our life, which would cause anybody else to be revolted. But instead, you love us. You welcome us. You accept us. You forgive us and call us your children. And so, our God, today we say simply this: thank you for your love.